For this briefing document, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. James Edward McDonald, an atmospheric physicist who started doing his own UFO research. One of the things debunkers about UFO-UAP phenomena bring up is the lack of scientists looking into the subject, or credible scientists in their mind. But there have been and still are. Dr. Avi Loeb certainly is one, Dr. Gary Nolan, Dr. Stanton Friedman, Dr. Leo Sprinkle, Dr. Jacques Vallée, Dr. Beatrice Villarreal, and quite a number of others around the world. But there were also in the past. The debunkers just choose to ignore them and their research, or call these scientists fanatics. James McDonald was born in Duluth, Minnesota on May 7, 1920. He got his bachelor's degree in chemistry from the University of Omaha. He served in the U.S. Navy during World War II, studying meteorological applications. He then got his master's degree from MIT. He did his doctoral work in meteorology at Iowa State University. He became an expert in cloud physics, micrometeorology, and weather modification. In the 1950s, he became the resident cloud physicist at the University of Chicago before relocating to the University of Arizona in Tucson. At U of A, he became the senior physicist at the Institute of Atmospheric Physics and also a professor of atmospheric sciences, positions he maintained until his death. Beginning in 1958, he began investigating UFOs, gathering certain case studies that he believed warranted more in-depth investigation besides the usual official dismissal. He kept handwritten journals documenting his UFO activities and effort to collect and analyze witness accounts. He began publicly advising individuals on UFO reporting and actively encouraged submissions for scientific evaluation. Starting around 1966, he would publicly critique Project Blue Book reports, faulting the methodology used and inadequate data handling. Dr. McDonald's review of cases revealed persistent anomalies that McDonald suggested warranted further investigation by trained scientists. McDonald would, in his time off, investigate UFO sightings on his own at his own expense. Dr. McDonald was a consulting scientist for APRO, Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, and he would use APRO files and files of other UFO organizations in his research. Just some of the cases he investigated and interviewed witnesses to were the 1964 Socorro, New Mexico case with Patrolman Lonnie Zamora, the 1966 Ravenna Portage County, Ohio police pursuit that involved over a dozen law enforcement officers, the 1952 Washington National Airport incidents, which had radar return evidence. He would analyze declassified Air Force reports. McDonald served as a consultant on the Condon Committee before resigning in protest on July 14, 1966, over the committee's flawed methodology. In 1967, the Office of Naval Research supported Dr. McDonald's research on UFOs, ultimately hoping that he would conclude that UFOs were misidentified clouds. On June 7, 1967, at the invitation of United Nations Secretary General Thant, Dr. McDonald spoke at the United Nations Outer Space Affairs Group, going over his research into UFOs. On July 29, 1968, he submitted a prepared statement regarding unidentified flying objects to the U.S. House Committee on Science and Astronautics. In this statement, McDonald included his personal investigations as well as 350 to 450 witness interviews he had conducted. His argument was that UFO reports constituted a legitimate scientific enigma that deserved rigorous interdisciplinary scrutiny rather than dismissal. His statement emphasized that many of the witnesses were pilots, astronomers, military, and law enforcement personnel. He also stated his belief that, quote, UFOs are probably extraterrestrial devices engaged in something that might be very tentatively be termed surveillance, end quote. Now, his advocacy regarding UFO research caused considerable backlash amongst his peers. McDonald faulted the scientific community for neglecting UFOs because of cultural ridicule and for presupposing that there had been no advanced extraterrestrial visitation. In May 1969, McDonald returned to Tucson from a trip to California. Specifically, he had been investigating UFO sightings around the China Lake Naval Weapons Station. Interestingly enough, during his flight home, his briefcase, which was full of sensitive interviews and documents about those sightings, disappeared from the flight. Once back home in Tucson, he started noticing occasions where he was being followed by unmarked cars without license plates. In addition, he had a carousel of UFO slides stolen from the projector after one of his UFO presentations. On December 27, 1969, McDonald delivered a presentation titled Science in Default, 22 Years of Inadequate UFO Investigations, to the 136th Annual Meeting of American Association for the Advancement of Sciences, or AAAS. Now, McDonald was no run-of-the-mill doctoral professor. He was elected a Fellow of the American Meteorological Society in recognition of his advancement of cloud physics and atmospheric research. He was appointed to the National Academy of Sciences panel for weather and climate modification. He was also a member of the American Geophysical Union and the Royal Meteorological Society that reflected his peer acknowledgement of his work in micrometeorology and precipitation mechanisms. James McDonald received many other accolades and had numerous published reports. Prominent UFO skeptic Philip J. Klass characterized James McDonald as a fanatical believer. McDonald had public debates with skeptics, including Donald Menzel, where McDonald defended UFO legitimacy. McDonald's advocacy for rigorous scientific investigation of UFOs resulted in considerable resistance from the scientific community and academic institutions which still viewed the UFO topic as unworthy of serious inquiry. In his personal life, James McDonald married his wife Betsy in 1945 and they raised 6 children together. However, by the mid-1960s, as James McDonald got more into UFO investigations, he was gone for periods of time doing those investigations and witness interviews. His preoccupation with UFOs caused Betsy to file for divorce in March 1971. James McDonald slid into depression at the dissolvement of his marriage and his being ridiculed by many of his peers for his UFO work. On April 9, 1971, James McDonald attempted suicide by shooting himself in the head, causing severe damage to his optic nerve, which left him blind. He received medical attention and started vision therapy, and doctors told him with some time vision may return. So James McDonald returned to work. But on June 12, 1971, he took a cab from the VA hospital where he had a vision appointment. He had the cab stop at a pawn shop where he purchased a pistol. Then he had the cab drop him off in the desert, just outside of Tucson. The next morning, a father and son out hiking found Dr. James McDonald's body just underneath this bridge, next to the Canada del Oro Wash, as it goes under the Ina Street Bridge. There was a .38 caliber revolver lying next to his body. He had been shot in the head. And after his death, Dr. McDonald's body was brought to Evergreen Mortuary here in Tucson, and he was cremated, and his ashes were given to his wife. So there's no marker or anything at the cemetery for him. Dr. James McDonald was considered a brilliant scholar as an atmospheric physicist. 4 of James McDonald's peers from the University of Arizona wrote a remembrance of their colleague, calling him, quote, a man of great integrity and great courage. He was loved and admired by many people. He made a lasting impact on many facets of atmospheric sciences, and he will be missed much more than we now realize. End quote. Betsy McDonald kept James's extensive files on UFOs for 25 years. In 1966, the entire collection was accepted by the University of Arizona Library in Tucson for their personal collections section. They are available to serious researchers and include interviews, documents, copies of Project Blue Book reports, and his personal handwritten journals that he kept from 1958 to 1971. No one had worked harder in the 1960s than James E. McDonald to convince Congress to hold serious, substantial subcommittee meetings to explore the UFO reality. In 2003, author Ann Druffel published Firestorm, Dr. James E. McDonald's Fight for UFO Science. The foreword to that book was written by Dr. Jacques Vallée. In that book, Ann Druffel goes over her analysis of James McDonald's death, and she firmly believes it was suicide. Others still wonder, though. And still today, we have a number of mysterious suicides in the UFO community and strange disappearances and deaths. Obviously, this is a very short synopsis on the life of James McDonald and what he brought to the UFO dialogue. Please go research him and learn about this man for yourself. I appreciate you watching this briefing document.